Hey, good afternoon. Well, I'm Kyle, and this panel is all about veneers. Um, I also host a podcast called the MWA Podcast, and joining us today are two outstanding furniture makers. And if you follow our podcast, I have not asked them how they pronounce their names, so this should be fun. So we got Shota Yamaguchi and Wayne Delyea. Was that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Wow. I'm impressed with myself. So anyway, but they're here to share their extensive experience and insights on veneers. So with that, we'll get into a couple of questions. So we'll start with you, Wayne. Tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into woodworking.
Okay, well, I grew up in Winslow, Arizona, standing on the corner just like everybody else, right? And in 1967, in Arizona, I was in the junior high, and if you're in the 8th grade, you get to go on a block away to the high school and take either a woodworking class or a metalworking class.
Here,
And I was...
hold the mic just closer.
Oh, close, okay.
Yep,
I'm
yep.
afraid I'd spit in it, you know. Anyway, so I thought about it, and I thought, you know, metalworking tools are just too expensive because we were poor, so I decided I'd do woodworking. And I got into that, and I had a great teacher. He was a nice guy, showed me everything I needed to know, and he also had the distinction of being the first center in Rose Bowl, like in 1920 or something like that, to make a touchdown. So I was impressed with that. Anyway, from there, I got into woodworking, making things, mostly because we couldn't afford furniture. We just made it ourselves, like a lot of people do. And going from 2x4 picnic tables to fine furniture now I'm really leaning towards marquetry and adding the artistic part to my furniture. So if you get a chance, go by if you haven't already seen it and take a look at the two pieces I brought with me. Okay?
All right. Thanks, Wayne. So, Shota, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into woodworking. And did I get your name right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
So my story is kind of similar to Wayne's. I took shop class, and I really loved it. And I was always kind of active, and I couldn't sit still. So I knew an office job wasn't the path for me. So I decided. At first, I wanted to be a home builder. I thought that would be a neat job, but I learned that you don't build a house by yourself, and I like to do everything by myself if I can. So around that time, my mom was, she had some guys build cabinets for us at our house, and I realized that, hey, there's people out there that make money doing this stuff, so I'm going to pursue it. So rather than going the college route, I looked for furniture making schools, and I found one in England that I liked. It was David Savage School of Furniture. Pretty smallish school where he's just teaching a few people at a time. And I did a year of that and came back to Austin and got furniture jobs and then started my own company about 10 years ago.
Oh, fantastic. Well, great. Well, let's talk a little bit about veneers. So what are the design considerations and advantages when using veneer? Wayne, we'll start with you.
So the advantages to me would be the variety of veneers that are available out there. You know, where I would never in my lifetime be able to get all these woods in, you know, and surely couldn't afford it. But I can get woods from all over the world from a place like Certainly Woods, who has a booth over here, and have it at my front door in a couple of days, you know. And I look at their website and try and see things that will work with my design for what I have in mind. When I teach my classes, I teach my students to let the wood do the work. You'll never be able to do as good as as that natural grain or whatever. For instance, I had a student who was doing hummingbirds, and he had all these little tiny feathers on this hummingbird, and he was wondering, how in the world am I ever going to cut all these tiny little pieces, you know? I said, don't. And we went and dug out a piece of wood that had all these tiny thin lines on it and everything, stuck it on there, and it looked like he was a master at his very first class, you know, because we let the wood do the work. That piece I have over here, one of the longhorns, you know, when a longhorn turns his head, the skin on their neck folds, you know, they have these folds on the side. Well, I took a piece of Kawazinga Babinga, and I just bought that because I like to say it. And it has these, you know, little ripples and some chatoyance, which makes it reflect light differently. So veneers really offer a whole lot of things. And I have a customer that thinks that veneer is cheap furniture and expensive furniture is solid wood. And I feel just the opposite. I use the solid wood for the frame, and I use that old cheap veneer for the art of it. One more thing I'll tell you, if you put a piece of marquetry on a cabinet, that cabinet will not only sell quicker, but it'll sell for more money, just having that little piece of art. And it doesn't have to be wonderful, you know, it looks like something I made. But anyway, it's a good thing. Try it out.
Hey, Shota, what about yourself? So what are some of the design considerations you look at, and what are the advantages of using veneer?
Yeah, so I do custom furniture, so it's a lot of the designs are given to me and the parameters, and a lot of my clients are modern architects or interior designers, and clean, simple lines, and not seeing structure is kind of the fad. So to work with wood in a way that is structural but also stable. Veneer has a lot of properties that allow me to do that. With solid wood, you have to think about cupping, and if you have perpendicular grains, then the wood movements start to become a factor that if you just veneer it, you can bypass a lot of that. And there's also considerations of how the wood looks. A lot of the best logs will be turned into veneers, so you have a lot more selection in terms of grain continuity and all of the pieces looking similar shade. So yeah, that's what I look for when I'm doing veneers.
Okay. Well, cool. You bring up a good point. So you can buy commercial veneers, or you can do your own shop veneers. So when do you use those? So Wayne, we can start with you. When would you use a commercial versus a shop veneer, or do you have a preference either way?
I have a preference. I almost exclusively use commercial veneers. You get used to working with them. They come in different thicknesses, you know, and to tell you the truth, I don't use anything but the commercial 1/42 of an inch veneer. It's what I use. I'm used to it. It seems to work well for me, and I know its pitfalls, such as one drop of water will turn it into a potato chip. Don't ask me how I know that. And I do not use any type of glue that has water in it, like Type Bond 3 or any of the Type Bonds or white glue or anything. I almost exclusively use a urea formaldehyde glue for my veneers, and it helps keep it flat. What else?
Yeah. Well, let's let Shota. So what do you prefer? Do you prefer shop made or commercial, or?
I do both. A lot of it depends on the application. If I want to have a really sturdy uh, piece, commercial veneer is paper thin, so if you get too careless, you'll sand right through it, which means your joinery has to be really precise. Um, and if you use it for high use surfaces like tabletops, it's going to get damaged really quickly. So I like to use shop sawn veneers for those purposes. And there's a lot more labor involved. You have to, flatten the board, you have to resaw it, you have to clean it up, and then you have to edge. So it's a lot more work, but you get a thicker layer. And but for everything else, like sides of cabinets, I typically use commercial because it's much faster, easier to get. It's a lot easier to join the pieces together, and it doesn't need to be high wearing in those places.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
And remember, commercial veneers are available in more sizes than just 1/42. They come in a various degree of thicknesses. Certainly wood, for instance, who I use, or all of these veneer companies have different thicknesses available. So it's a good way to go if you don't want to spend the day sawing.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the commercial veneers. So I know, especially the thin stuff, when you get it, sometimes it can be like a potato chip. So,
Yes.
well, what's the process of flattening that, and what do you use?
So I tried all these do-it-yourself remedies, where you do that. There's tons of videos on YouTube. Mix it up this way. This is how I do it, and they're from people all over the world. And every time I do it, I'm never satisfied with it. So I just go ahead and buy it, the commercial veneer softener. You put it in a spray bottle, or you can buy it already in the spray bottle. Spray it out, do your thing. I'll put it in the press sometimes if I'm in a hurry to press it out with an electric blanket on it to warm it up to help get the moisture out of it. But I use the commercial veneer softener. I find it to be a much better product.
What about you, Shota?
Same thing. Veneer softener works wonders. Most of the time when you order veneer from companies like Certainly Wood, they'll have it rolled and it'll come in a box. You want to unroll it immediately and don't let it sit in the box for too long. And most of the time it's going to be flat enough to use straight out. If you have burls, then you'll have to use the veneer softener, flatten it, wait for the veneer softener to be dry to the touch. So that is a process, but yeah, and if you have old veneer that's just been sitting and it crinkles, the veneer softener will loosen it up and you just flatten it out again.
Okay. Cool. So we'll stay with you, Shota. So what type of, because I think you already answered this question, but what type of glue do you use in your veneer work?
I use all kinds. It depends on the application. For thicker veneers and small pieces, I'll just use PVA. Usually for small pieces, I'll use PVA. For large pieces where I need the open time to be able to apply the glue and stick it in a press, I'll use urea formaldehyde glue. Most of the time it's got a nice open time and it dries really hard, which minimizes veneer creep. I use epoxy sometimes if I need super long open time, but I tend to shy away from epoxy.
Right. Well, I know epoxy can be toxic. Most people don't know that. But what about the urea formaldehyde glue? Is this the Unibond 800 stuff?
Yeah. You want to have a dust mask and you want to wear gloves. It is toxic stuff.
Yeah. Now is it only toxic when you're mixing it when it's dry?
Exactly.
Okay.
That was my point. It comes with a powder. It's a two-part. It's a resin and then a powder. And I can tell you my formula. I use a cup of resin and quarter cup powder, okay? And like you said,
Yeah.
the dust, you don't want to breathe that dust, but once you've mixed it and there's no longer dust, it's mixed in with that liquid, then it's not harmful anymore, you know?
Yeah.
I had a student one time, I had some of it left over. And I was going to throw it in the dumpster. I said, I'll just take that rest out and throw it in the dumpster. And that student said, no, what if a rat ate it and died? I said, well, what if he did?
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think that's a misconception a lot of people have about the Unibond 800. And, people think you need to be in a Tyvek suit and, separate air breather type thing on your back and all that kind of stuff. But it's mainly the dust when you're mixing it, and just a normal P100 respirator would work fine. Yeah. All right, great. Well, let's talk about the best ways to clamp veneer. I know there are probably 20 or 30, but give me some of your favorites. I know it'll also depend on applications, but so what are you mainly use to clamp your veneers?
If it's flat, I'll 95% of the time use a vacuum press or a vacuum bag. I have a press that's pretty much a vacuum membrane, and it's on a hinged lid. And you just stick the piece in, you shut the hinge, and you press the vacuum, and it sucks it tight. Yeah, for curve work, there's a whole lot of application or a whole different ways of clamping, but most of the time I'm trying to find ways of sticking it in the vacuum bag.
What about you, Wayne?
The same. I have a vacuum table, like Shota's saying. I have a kind of a do-it-yourself, and then I bought the frame and the cover for it from a professional company, and I just made the table, and then the top frame with a hinge on it came from a professional company. What was the rest of the question? Yeah, that's my favorite way is vacuum.
Bag.
It's just so much easier. I started out with a bag. You don't have to have a table. You can buy these bags, from Joe Woodworker is a good place to get it. You can get a very reasonable price. You can get a vacuum and a hose and a bag that seals on one end, and it's not real expensive. It's a good way to start out. I had that, and then I was getting to and I work all by myself. I live out in the middle of nowhere and work by myself. There's nobody to help me, so, and I'm too dumb to make little pieces. I have to make big pieces, and it has to go in this little bag. So you get it all glued up, and you got all these veneers and everything going on, and then you're trying to carry it around and get this 4-foot piece into a 5-foot bag, and stuff like that. So if you can afford it, or eventually work your way up to it, if you can get a table type veneer press like that, it's a lot easier in the long run.
Have either of y'all done any hammer veneering with hide glue or something like that?
I tried it and I failed. And then I tried it again only like 18 more times and failed at all of those. And I bet Frank Straza knows, though, because he does that kind of stuff so perfectly. He's excellent.
Well, fantastic. Well, let's turn it over to the audience and see if y'all have any questions. Anyone have a question for us?
Oh, I thought so.
Oh, wait.
You don't have to have a bag either. I've done a lot of, especially small things like box tops or anything like that. You can just get some cawls and a platen, put some clear plastic between your veneer and your cawls, and just use clamps, 2x4s across, flatten it out, maybe some MDF, or my favorite is melamine, because it's nice and flat and leaves a clean surface. And just use the clamps. You don't have to buy a bag, especially starting out.
Now, that brings up a question for me. Have either of y'all used those skateboard bags? They have those bags that you can just, has a pump on it?
I've never used it,
Yeah.
but I don't think they hold the, well, I don't know. I can't tell you one way or the other,
Okay.
but I just can't believe they'd be as good as clamps or a
Yeah.
vacuum bag.
Just curious.
I haven't used it either.
Okay. All right. Well. Well, any questions before we go? Sure. All righty. Oh, wait. Yes.
Hey there. Two-part question. First one, substrates. Obviously, kind of, the substrates I'm familiar with are MDF and plywood, right? Is there a specific types of plywoods you would recommend staying away from or steering towards, or are there other substrates outside of those that you would use? So that's the first question. And then the second one is finish. Are there finishes that you use specifically for veneer or you would stay away from for veneer? So.
The substrate I use most often is Baltic birch. There's all kinds. MDF is nice because it's cheap and it's flat, but it doesn't span very well, and any moisture that gets into it, it's going to swell up. So I steer away from it. Baltic birch can get a little heavy, so sometimes I'll just use maple plywood. The thing with that, though, is there's voids underneath, so you have to fix those before you can press on it. I've also used MDO in the past, which is medium density overlay. It's what signboards are made out of. And that's great because it's exterior rated and it's got a nice flat surface. And it tends to be flatter. And as far as finish, I don't have any no's or yeses just because it's veneer.
I agree with Shota. If you can get the Baltic birch plywood, get it. Your substrate, you're not going to find it at Home Depot or Lowe's. You're going to have to go to a reputable lumber dealer, tell them what you're looking for. Look how many rows it has. Always look and see how many rows of veneers it has in it, because it's nothing more than a veneer. Like I said, just don't go to Home Depot and Lowe's and put your beautiful project on that junk and then be disappointed. Oh, by the way, when you veneer something on one side, you absolutely positively on your substrate have to put any kind of veneer, cheapest, junkiest veneer you've ever seen in your life, on the back side. Because even though veneer is very thin wood, it is wood, and it expands and contracts with moisture, just like all other wood, so it's never dead. And it will expand and contract at different rates. So if you only veneer one side of a piece of plywood, you're liable to end up with this mounded looking bent thing. So always veneer both sides. Use a cheap poplar. Veneer companies all sell poplar. Veneer with something cheap like that. It's not going to cost much more, and it'll keep that piece nice and straight.
All right. Any other questions? What? Hey.
How important is it so plywood, they change the orientation of the grain with each layer, right? So for your veneer, how important is it to do that top layer across grain to the plywood? Does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yeah. Well, plywood, the reason they changed the grain directions on it is it makes it stronger. The one under it helps hold that together. One under that goes a different direction, so that's a good thing. That's what you want to have happen. it makes no difference on grain direction whatsoever on your plywood. But like I said, the only really important thing is you veneer both sides of it.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, before we close out, so Wayne, where can folks find you on the interwebs?
Well, I just got rid of my website October the 30th because they sent me a bill for it and I've never made a dime, so I got rid of it. It's gone. WayneDelea.com does not exist. So get on Instagram. I get on there and show people what I'm up to, you know, and tell the IRS all that money I've been hiding. No. And I have a Facebook page. I think it's called Wayne Delyea or something like that. So, but everything I put on Instagram goes over to Facebook too. Okay. And or come to one of my classes. They're quite inexpensive. I supply all the veneers right out of my pocket. I bring them. Everything I have in my shop, pretty much, that I can get in the back of my truck, comes down there. So you'll have hundreds of different choices of what kind of wood to use from all over the world.
I have a website, www.sydfurniture.com, and I also have an Instagram, syd_furniture. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And my name again is Kyle Barton. You can find me at barton.kyle on Instagram or the MWA podcast. So, no. All right. So thank you so much. And I think we'll have another panel at 4.
That is correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
All right. So thank you.
Thank you.